Well, hello and welcome to L Forecast. My name is Chris Officer. Again, it's my distinct honor to be able to interview my brother, Nathanael Officer. I welcome you back.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Last time we were talking, we left off on digital discipleship. Now, for you leaders and you listeners who are out there, Nathanael has he's done extensive research and a lot of field work. And matter of fact, growing up in a discipleship family, where he's not only grown up in church but been in his entire life in church, and brings a wealth of information and knowledge and insight and practical ideas. And so I'm really excited about today's conversation. So last time we were together, we talked a little bit about your past, about your family, and how you were being discipled by Dad and by others in the church. And I think that's so very it's so very key for us to recognize where we come from. And understand that God is taking us like this direction that we're in. So last time we were talking about how the fact that you went through the master's program at Life Pacific, and you had written a paper on, or actually your whole program, your whole capstone project was on digital discipleship. And this started in 2019, just ahead of the COVID-19 pandemic. And you closed that out in 20. Tell us a little bit about that, and then we'll start the conversation.
Yeah. So starting, I knew when I got to Life Pacific that I wanted to study, I wanted to do my project on discipleship. It's what I had finished off with in my undergrad work. It's something I'm very passionate about. And so I was like, this is the direction I want to go. But it has to be unique. It has to be something that you're contributing that has not been addressed before. And so that was the challenge when I started in 2019 of how do I find something that has been so well documented over the centuries, basically. I mean, you go back to the apostles and all the way through,
right?
Like, there is so much on this. So what's unique about now, and what's unique about me? What can I offer? And so that's where I felt like I kind of stumbled onto it, but it's something that God has kind of been shaping in me throughout my life. Being involved in tech, being involved with with Dad when he was building his computers and stuff, and just being around. And when he'd go over to his friend's house when he didn't have an understanding of how to do things, and that person did, and then they would help him through. And I'm there for all of it. I'm
seeing asking all the questions. Yeah.
Yeah. Being the observer, getting to the inside scoop on stuff that normally, you don't get an option or an opportunity to. So I got involved with that, and kind of like how we discussed last time about, getting involved at 12 years old in tech and running sound, and kind of just seeing the behind the scenes stuff of how this is used, and always having that as a presence throughout my life. So seeing how these two things meet, technology and discipleship.
Yeah.
And getting to kind of present that to my professors and the leaders of this program, and being like, yeah, that hasn't been done before. So the challenge that I was faced with that is that there's not material on it. So when I was looking for articles, I have to have something like 10 articles specifically on this, and then some that are on discipleship in general and others. So it's like just getting that quota of 10 was difficult, because I had to reach into like the medical field and other places to find information about how it's used to train and teach people across disciplines.
Yeah. I mean, we're all scrambling.
Yeah.
Even today, we're still scrambling on how we can continue to connect with people who have decided that they may not be able or be ready to come back into that in-person connection. There's still people being ill. There's still people affected by COVID and other things. And so how do we reach those folks? That's a big question. But you mentioned something that really sparked a thought for me.
Mhm.
So when you were 12 and going forward in tech, you were learning, you were ministering, but you were also being discipled.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a valuable viewpoint on ministry as a whole. Oftentimes we get so focused on the people that we're ministering to that we realize we fail to realize that the people that we're working alongside of, the people we're shoulder to shoulder with, are really the true ministry. This discipling of people alongside of helping those folks that are needy. Like the picture that I had was of Jesus, who had the 12 disciples with him, and he was surrounded with needy people, and he would oftentimes be interrupted on his path here to there and would be ministering to them. But he was also so focused on instilling those values and understanding of who he is and also who they are in him, these disciples, like he mentored them. And I was thinking about that when we had this program in our church a few years ago called Bridgeway to Hope. And I had a few of our young leaders who were so angry at each other because one guy forgot to bring the pizza, right? And he was supposed to be there, and all these hungry folks didn't have the pizza on time, right? And so there was just angry going on, and I remember sitting down and talking to these two leaders and realizing with them that we put the focus on the people we're ministering to, and not the fact that we're to be helping and leading and discipling one another, and that the real ministry is right next to us. Like these people who are fighting alongside of us are our big focus. Jesus said, "The poor you will have always, but me you won't always have." And I thought about that a lot. You know what? There's these relationships that we have with people who we're called to disciple in our church. We're always going to have needy folks coming that we need to go reach out to, but we don't always have access to this person who is right here with us, that we could really instill and impact their life, and then allow them to impact our lives. I think that's such a valuable way, where in times past where I felt like people, my own leaders, get in the way of ministry.
Like, would you just move out the way?
Yeah, we're supposed to be ministering to people. Well, you guys just get on the same program, not really realizing that my perspective is totally off, that actually they are the ministry, and then we're going to minister to these needy people together. And that's such again, thank you for sparking that, because that's really what it is. You were mentored as a young man coming into ministry, both in how to you were ministering as in tech and in sound, but also somebody was mentoring you as a person. And so that's a huge model just right there of how we can disciple. But the question now is, how do we do that in a digital way?
Right. Because that is the difficulty with the distance, right? The difficulty without being in person. And some would say that this is a new problem, but I had to look at it deeper, because it's like, well, is this something that's new that's just going to go away? Like we're going to find a solution for this. It's like, no, Paul addressed the same problem. That's why we have these letters.
Wow. Yeah.
He discipled people from afar, and you're like, well, he didn't do it with people he didn't know, but he did. That's why we have Romans. It's like this is a guy giving us a blueprint for exactly how this thing should be done. And it's like Romans was basically his gospel, right? It's like you had the other apostles' gospel, and this was his.
Yeah.
And you were like, okay, so how do we minister to people that we haven't met, that we haven't involved ourselves with, that don't have this connection? It's like in Romans, he was giving that the basics that were needed, right? Yeah. Whereas in the other letters, he came with that correction that was needed.
Yeah.
Because he had the pull, he had the relationship.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I could hold you accountable because I started you.
Yeah, there was already a foundation there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like we could kind of look through these to see that how discipleship happens over distance, right now we have it more immediately, which is great because we could address concerns that are happening now or as they're happening like live,
Yeah.
right? Then it was like whoever was traveling over there,
Yeah.
the letter gets there in a few weeks or a few months,
Right.
we don't know. But he had to deal with the things in his time. um, Ours, we get to deal with a little bit quicker. We still have difficulties, of course, but um, technology has expanded so much that it allows us that immediacy, that access right now to people who need it. And
Yeah.
I think just like with medicine developing how it has, it's kind of God's way of um, addressing some of these needs, right? The things that can be fixed, the things that need to be fixed, and we have access to those things now.
Mm.
So with digital discipleship, the core parts still have to be there, though, right? So
Mm.
as far as I understand it, with Paul and the Romans, he eventually was able to go there, right? Whether it was in captivity, who knows if he was able to expand that and
Right.
be outside
Right.
of his
Yeah.
house arrest and stuff. But that was his goal, was to get over there and to be there in person and to kind of that was his mission, right? Um, so he was able to disciple them first with his letter, and then we assume later in person. But that connection still has to be there. That is a core piece that you see with Jesus and his disciples, who became apostles, who then were the foundations of the church that were built up and spread out. It had to be that, Paul and Barnabas, or uh, Peter, James, and John, and these relationships that form together, where it's like you said, we're discipling, we're ministering to the people who are next to us, right? It's like that pure mentorship.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're holding each other accountable, but we're also encouraging each other on in
Yeah.
this journey. And so it's necessary. You need that piece, right? So
Yeah.
the whole, was it mentorship constellation? You have
Yeah.
the upwards, right? People who are feeding into you, the people around you that you feed back and forth, and then the people below that you're
Yeah.
feeding into, right?
Yeah.
So all of this is good and necessary, right? Because if we are going to have anything to give, we have to have something coming in, right?
Yes. Yeah.
This
Absolutely right.
this process. So when it comes to the digital discipleship and being able to reach people from afar, of course, we have to have access to them. So we
Yeah.
could do that. Many churches and ministries are doing it through video.
Hmm.
So that gives like knowledge acquisition, right? So you have an opportunity to learn something from somebody else that you didn't know before. Um, then you have serving. Is it possible to serve across the distance? Now, this one I think is particularly tricky. One book that I read had an example of it. It's called Baking Change. It came out in 2020,
Mm.
and he referenced in his book, Sean King referenced in his book, that there was a disaster that happened, and he needed to organize and get things moving so that there could be supplies gotten where they need to go. And so he used Twitter to organize people,
Yeah.
and he got suppliers. They're like, okay, I could resource you with this stuff. He got the people who would ship it, and then he got the people on the ground who would then distribute it, all through communication technology.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I'm like, wow, that's like serving, but it's through
Yeah.
distance. I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
that's the first example I've seen of something like that, because it was baffling me. I'm like, how do you serve when you're not in the same area like that?
Yeah.
But there's a way, right? And technology allows us to make it happen faster.
Mhm. Wow.
Um, and so then the other pieces, so the ones that I listed out in my research project, that all of the theologians, past and present, kind of agreed on, um, the core three of learning, serving, and community, like community fellowship, right, with fellow
Yeah.
believers.
Mhm.
But kind of the auxiliary of that, but I feel like is extremely important, is leadership and obedience. And that obedience kind of ties the rest of it together, because without obedience, the rest of it
Yeah.
falls apart, right?
Yeah.
So in Matthew 28:18 to 20, Jesus gives the Great Commission to go
Yeah.
right? So it's movement to teach everything that he taught them
Mm-hmm.
and teach them to obey,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's that piece. It's like, okay, all this is great. You could go, you could teach, but if
Yeah.
you're not obeying yourself and you're not teaching others to obey, it kind of is pointless.
Yeah. Yeah.
So all the rest of the things, as far as over distance, I feel can be accomplished. There may be some tweaks here and there depending on regions and
Yeah.
whatever else. Communication itself and language barriers may be a difficulty, but again, with technology, I mean, may not be a perfect translation, but some of
Right.
the free apps that we
Yeah.
have, you just type it in, you're like, oh, here it is. Let me send that out, and hopefully, the message is pretty clear.
Yeah.
But those barriers, they're not insurmountable. They're not
Right.
something that we can't get over, through, under, across. They're just hardships. But the learning definitely takes place online. So many people in churches and organizations are already kind of filling that gap, right? They're putting in material. Um, the community, that would be more like what we're doing right now, right? We're
Right.
we're miles apart from each other, but
Right.
we are still able to connect.
Yeah. We're in two
And
different states right now. It's pretty awesome.
yeah, but we could, if it was just over voice, it's still good.
Yeah.
Like whatever way it is, whether it's through text, voice, or even like a video chat kind of format, you get that connection. The more, I guess, real, tangible it is, the better
Mhm.
for the relationship.
Yeah.
But it's whatever your resources can sustain.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Wow. Okay. That's
and
awesome.
the obedience, again, that's just, that kind of comes with the learning process. Um, Community, it would be with, this, what we have right now,
Right.
serving. That one can be kind of tricky, but, get creative, try
Yeah.
to find those ways. Whatever, it's more, I think, about meeting practical needs than about a particular, like, I need to go to that building and do that thing. It's like, if we're in our community like Jesus was, just walking through, and people needed him where he was, and he just did what he does. Like, okay, this is who I am. This is what
Right.
I do. I will take care of this as it's presented to me right now.
Yeah.
More like an open-handed approach rather than, well, this is my role. I can't help you right now. I'm doing this thing over here. I'm on my way to Jerusalem. I can't help your blind eyes right now.
Right.
Like, whatever
Right.
it is.
Yeah.
But it's like, that wasn't his approach. I mean, even the woman who touched his clothes, he was serving her.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
he was just there. That's all he was.
These ministries happened in the interruptions. Like he was going
Yeah.
somewhere and he was interrupted.
Yeah, that story was fascinating to me. As pastor did a sermon on it, because he was on his way to a person's house whose daughter was dying.
Yeah.
He had urgency. He had a mission. He had a purpose. But yet, as he's being crushed in this crowd, and a woman touches him, and he's like, "Wait a minute, who touched me?"
Yeah.
Everybody's like, "Jesus, can you just go where we're going? Can we
Yeah.
please we have a mission?" And he's like,
You're
"No,
asking
no, no.
crazy questions.
Somebody touched me. I need to deal with this." Right.
Yeah.
And then, addresses it, but is very gracious, because there's so much that goes into that. And I mean, that's a whole
Yeah.
nother story,
Well,
but
just being emotionally present
yeah,
in the urgent issue where you're still being integral to yourself, right?
yeah,
You don't stop being you, even though you're pressed into the tyranny of the urgent. Like Jesus, he was present enough to know that somebody had touched him and that he stopped, even though, yeah, you're right, he was on his way. There was a daughter of Abraham that needed direct attention. Yeah, that's amazing. Mm.
no. And so it's living that life in the moment, in what we're doing, and having that heart of compassion to serve wherever God is calling us to serve.
You
Um,
said in the Great Commission, right, that it was go, teach, and obey, and that in that the obedience, if we're not obeying, then the others just do not matter. I really like that. I think that's so very crucial for us. That for me, it started first with obey. Sometimes I didn't even understand why God was sending me to do something, but He taught me along the way of not only what I was doing, but the motives. He showed my own heart to me. He taught me things by his Holy Spirit. He'd open up the scripture to me. Matter of fact, as I was obeying him to go, that he was opening up the Bible to me to be, it's not just a theology book or a doctrine book or a history book or a science book, but it's a service manual. And it's, and as you read it as a servant, then you begin to realize, oh my gosh, Jesus, the servant, the very representation of God, that as we read this, we are to go out and to be servant leaders. And that gives me the motive for my going, right? And so then of course I'm going and teaching, and others are obeying, going and teaching. And like there's this cycle that starts then, right?
Yeah.
And it just gets bigger. It's you know, you and I touch two, and then they touch two, and then they, you know, and it's
Right.
exponential. Wow. I got a question for you. So
Yeah.
I am nervous as heck when it comes to technology. And there's quite a few leaders that don't have those same skills and background to be able to utilize utilize such a wealth of knowledge about how to use technology. What should they do? I mean, how can they overcome maybe that aversion to technology to begin to do what you're talking about?
Man, see, this touches on another area where I'm like, we need a resource center,
Yeah.
right? We need to stop having things spread out everywhere and just one hub, you go to it, you get what you need, kind of thing. This is another thing that I plan on tackling, but we'll see. So every church that I've been to, I've tried to create a manual for what they need so that anybody could step into that role and do it. Mine was specifically in tech with sound engineering, setup, teardown, those types of things. Where I got a lot of information was either directly from, like, let's say the soundboard is a Yamaha. I go to the manufacturer, I get the information on that. It's a lot of technical jargon,
Right.
which if you're not in it, then it's going to be pretty much useless. It's like, okay. But
if you're running it Sunday, you better be in it.
Yes, exactly. You would hope so. But when it comes to other things, like let's say I need to be able to broadcast my message, or at least be able to upload a video of it. Like maybe I can't do it live, but maybe I could, record it and then upload it later. Yeah. How do I, what types of material will I need for a bare minimum kind of situation? I guess that would come down to the research, understanding what types of, how to phrase your question when you're Google searching, right? To get the right answers, to get at what you need. But YouTube videos, they can be extremely helpful. Again, weeding through some of the nonsense to try to find the ones that are relevant to what you have going on. But people have gotten very specific with their videos. So it's even more helpful than it was 5-10 years ago. So you could find stuff on there that will address the specific need that you have. Just getting something up and running, a variety of ways to do that, either just recording with the phone, going on Facebook Live, having anybody who could just get something as simple as like this stand right here. You put the phone on it, you put it up on some boxes and point it where you want it to go.
And start.
There's things like that, all the way up to buying, a couple of $1,000s worth of equipment with cameras and stands and varieties of computers that the stream will come into, and it'll be broadcast out of this one, and the whole setup with all that. As far as one hub to get that information, I don't know of anything that exists yet.
Right.
I would hope to.
For me, so I'm just so new to podcasting. So even before, when God said, okay, you're going to go and start doing this digital discipleship thing, right? We were setting up for putting Kadash onto a digital platform and to start a podcast. I had not even listened to a podcast. So I'm like,
that would make it difficult.
Yeah. I'm like, what do I do? So guess what? I started listening to podcasts. Like, well, what are people doing and how they, and I found out that by exposing myself to how people were using this, it really lessened my fear and anxiety, because I realized there were so many different kind of podcasts. I mean, there's podcasts about everything. and it's in any kind of genre, situation, storytelling,
Yeah.
interviews, ramblings, you name it, you got it. And so
Yeah.
it really was freeing for me, because I had in my mind, well, I don't know how to do this, and if I put this out there, it's just going to sound stupid. um
Yeah. It's very not confrontational, but what is the word I'm looking for? Um like overwhelming and kind of scary, especially when what you see, which is the main ones that are out there, are how people are doing it perfectly,
yeah,
right? And when
yeah,
you see that, you're like, I can't even, like, I don't
yeah,
have the equipment, I don't have the personnel, I don't,
can't even
what?
touch that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so yeah, the exposure to just how it is a great like learning experience, and kind of helping you adjust and get comfortable, one with like the dialogue, the lingo, everything, but then just the format of it, like how does it normally run, what does it look like, all of that.
right, yeah. Yeah, I was gonna do a quick search. We used to use a platform. What was it? Something about Stream Duck or something like that. Anyways, we had this StreamYard. It has a duck symbol, so I always
Mhm.
associate it. But
Yeah.
StreamYard was really, so when 2020 hit and we shut the churches down, we had to go to to uh, remote sessions, remote lessons. All of our service was online. Matter of fact, we started opening up and break it out in my front room, and so StreamYard actually, it was able to have multiple cameras connecting phones, so you could
Oh,
use your
nice.
phone as a camera, and then with an operator you could switch between it with ease, and you could throw headers up there. It looks like a newscast, and then when if you launched it with a website, it would automatically go to live on Facebook and live on YouTube. And so you could set it all up to where it just
Wow.
in one place, it could funnel all that stuff. And then of course you've got it on different platforms. They've since expanded that to other social media platforms, and also being able to record that and throw up something on Twitter or so there's a bit
Yeah.
of hosting there too. But for some non-technical folks, it was an easier thing for us to be able to use that, and I really appreciated um, having that.
Yeah. Yeah. Something that's more streamlined where you don't have to jump through all the hoops to make it happen.
Mm. Now, when you sent me an email earlier, and you had talked about discipleship, how it is and how it should be. We have about 10 minutes left on this. Let's talk a little bit about that. How what you're seeing that the church needs to be recognizing about its discipleship, and how important that is, and really what are things that leaders need to be thinking about when it comes to discipleship.
All right. So we got a lot of space to cover there.
Yeah, yeah. And so
So
we
let's
can,
see. I'll condense it down. So looking at my experience, I've been fortunate enough, and maybe in some views unfortunate enough, to be at many churches. You
Mhm.
know, throughout growing up, probably at 15 churches that I remember, but more than likely like 30 or so that we attended within like an 18-year period sometimes.
Mm,
Some were just, one visit, some were a couple months, some were a couple
yeah,
years, but,
yeah.
going through that. And then my adult life, moving around, because of course, when you move, you're not familiar with the area, you got to
Mhm.
learn this other stuff. And so I've been able to, one, see effective discipleship as modeled by, our dad and how he lived,
Right.
which is, I think, the best form of discipleship. You need to be in constant
Mhm.
connection, communication with that person.
For
Like you
for
see,
for a length of time.
yeah, yeah. I mean, if you look at the structure that Jesus had, whether you take the view of a year and a half of ministry or three
Right.
years, he
Uh-huh.
had that with these disciples,
Yes.
living all the time. Like they
Right.
ate meals together, they slept in the same areas, they traveled, like
Right.
whatever hardships they went through, it was together.
Right.
And that's a part of it. That's a necessary part of it.
Mhm.
So being able to see effective discipleship there, a really good effective discipleship program in a church where it was directed at bringing you from here to there. Like
Yeah.
the growth was an essential part of it, and
Hmm.
that being gauged by whatever assignments you turned in, the counseling that you go through with the leaders of the group, the mentors, and the weekly and often multiple times a week conversations and in-person meetings and things like that. So being able to see effective discipleship really helps to see where it's lacking.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. Hmm.
and in that, because we have to have grace for where everybody is at in this
Right.
process at
Yeah.
every church. So understanding that not every congregation of believers has the ability to set up and resource, or even has the teachers and the staffing available to
Right.
produce something like that,
Yeah.
which I think is where something like L4 comes in, because
Right.
it could go everywhere. You
Yeah.
just need a computer, right?
Yeah. Right.
So that's I think where those types of things come in. If you're looking for like, oh well, I want it to be with somebody that I know in my community, well, hopefully your church has that
Mhm.
together.
Right.
Um, one of the churches that I've been to out here had a really nice program, but it was short. It was 10 weeks.
Hmm.
I think it's more of like an introductory, right? It's something that kind of just gets you in the door, gives you a taste, and you have to pursue the rest of it. But it
Yeah.
doesn't have that extra piece,
Yeah.
right? So it's like you go in, you meet people, you see how things are done as far as what the church is called to do in
Yeah.
this particular region, and then here's the 10-week course. You're going to be with these same 10 people for these 10 weeks, and it's good.
Yeah.
But then it's like it gets you to the edge, almost to the peak of the roller coaster, but not quite over.
Yeah.
So you're
Yeah.
just kind of sitting there,
You're
like,
like, somebody, little push,
need a
please.
push, just rock. We'll get there, right? So it's like you're almost there, but you're not quite.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that time, that effort is needed to get the rest of the way. And so what I see, I kind of take the mere Christianity approach. Like
Yeah.
C.S.
Yeah.
Lewis said, don't stay in the hallway of Christianity, get into a room, right? So these are the denominations.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's better to be in one,
Yeah.
even if it's not what you would say is perfect. None of
Yeah.
us are perfect, but
Yeah.
whatever the definition of that is,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be perfect. Just get in somewhere. So
Yeah.
whatever discipleship is formed
Yeah.
around, whatever that looks like in that congregation, it's better than nothing. It's good to have something.
Yeah, that answers the question of I believe that John was asking in 1 John 1:7. He says, "If we are in the light, as He is in the light, we will have fellowship with one another, and it's the blood of Jesus that atones for our sins." And it doesn't have to be perfect. That's not the point. The point is that you and I don't have to be fixie about that.
No.
It's about what's happening in that transparent community where Jesus is actually working on us, actively working on us together. And so coming in, warts and all,
No.
morning breath, hair's all poop, that's me today,
No.
and not really having to put on airs, but really coming in there as honestly and as openly as I can, because that's really what he's talking about, is that in the light, this
No.
transparency. I found that those kinds of really deep, open, accountable relationships that I've had with other Christians have been the most formative on me in my own personal walk, outside of just the Apostle Paul and all these different writers. That living with those people and actually seeing God working His love out of me with people who were perhaps difficult to love, or maybe I was the difficult one to love. That seeing that work, I mean, that's really what I believe is a missing component in a lot of discipleship. If we talk about, churches get programming, like, hey, we got a program for everything.
Yep.
But that verse just says, no, church is very simple. It's just connections.
Mhm.
You're coming to Jesus, and if you come to Jesus, if two people are coming to the same point, they're going to find each other, right? So if we're both coming to Jesus, we're going to be in community with each other.
Yeah.
In that community, it's Jesus that's washing us, and we get the opportunity to love. And I've had such a joy finding people who are just a step ahead of me in being like Jesus, and helping me encouraging me and prodding me on to being more than who I am today.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
I'm still struggling though, because I don't know how to connect with people in that kind of meaningful way more remotely. Like this right here, this is an amazing opportunity for you and I to spur each other on to greater things.
Yeah.
But how do, I guess the question is I guess maybe the answer to my question is that even through things like what we're talking about today may help other leaders who are struggling with technology and with even seeing the value of digital discipleship, that perhaps they could see this and say, okay, well, maybe there is something there. Maybe I need to look again. As we close down here, and we've got just a minute and a half, people are going to want to connect with you.
Yeah.
How are they going to be able to do that?
All right. So the two best ways, and I check my email on the website all the time, is weirdworkswonders@gmail.com or weirdworkswonders.wordpress.com.
Very cool. And
it's spelled wrong.
Okay.
It's spelled WIERD Works Wonders. The rest of it's spelled right. Just that first one.
Yep. Weird is spelled weird.
Yes.
So, and what kind of content would they be looking forward to seeing on there?
Lots on the church as it is today. Some critiques, some encouragements, kind of a holistic approach to Christianity, which takes on the person, the church, the structure, the country, the politics, like how we engage as human beings and Christians in all of this.
Very, very cool. Well, Nate, thanks for joining us today. Thanks for
thank you
for, just the conversation. I think this is amazing. So we're going to have you on again soon.
All right. Sounds good.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And to all you listeners, thank you for joining us today. And this is the end of our show. Have a good one.